Welcome, Photofy Academy. I am your host, Angelique Boulding, Director of Business Development here at Photofy. Today, we have one of my favorite topics, and that is creating video, and more specifically, video production basics for mobile. So by this point, all of us pretty much have a smartphone, and the power that we have in our hands to market our businesses and tell our stories is pretty monumental. And if you're on social media or you've been anywhere, have a TV, listen to the radio, I mean, making content is huge. And video is one of those things where they call it video is king, because it really, really is. You have algorithms across social media channels that prioritize video because it's an opportunity to tell a story, but also gain eyeballs and gain views. So today, we are going to go through some basics, and I want to prepare everybody because it might seem like a lot, but I promise you these are some really great beginner steps. And it's not one of those things that there's a right way, a wrong way, or a perfect way to do it. The goal is to give you some simple tips and tricks and ideas to think about when you're in the production process to help you become a more professional and better videographer with your mobile device. So I want to say that also because, it's really important from a content perspective. Don't overthink it. At the end of the day, it's always most important to get your content out there and to tell your story. So don't overthink, everything that we're going to go through today is that's how it has to be and how it has to be done. We simply want to provide a guideline to help you become a better mobile videographer. So let's dive in. So, video production basics for mobile. The first thing that we're going to go over is a little bit of our agenda. So, understanding what you can expect from, and let me make sure my slides are working here. There we go. So, our agenda. So, we're going to go through a series of tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, some resources and tools, and then we're going to end on a live demo. And the reason we'll end on a live demo is because we have a bunch of amazing enterprise brands and customers that we work with, and we want to make sure that we give you all an opportunity to really get a taste of how to not only put this into play, but also create really awesome branded content based on the videos that you've created. So 63% of businesses have started using video content marketing. And out of those, 82% of businesses feel video marketing is an important part of their strategy. So adding a product video on your landing page can increase conversions by 80%. Now that's pretty big. And you think that by simply creating a video, and I say simple, and I get there's some complexities to it and it can be daunting, but by simply getting on camera, telling your story and publishing it, that is where you're gaining attention. And there are some other tips and tricks to that, especially when you think about we live in an age where we have a user's attention or a viewer's attention for maybe 30 seconds. And we hope that in that 30 seconds, we can really, really grab their attention and then nourish that attention by giving them and, really adhering to the rest of that story. But that first 30 seconds, and I would beg to say the first 3 to 10 seconds are the most important, or what we'll call the hook. So wanting to really put our best foot forward and capture their intention so that we can really look at ways that video marketing is not only an important part of our strategy, but so we can actualize on seeing those conversions. So what we have here and something that we compiled is a glossary of terms. And if you are a photographer, if you're not a photographer, great. If you are, these might be a little bit more familiar to you. Some of you might not know that on your mobile device, there are a lot of opportunities to shoot in manual mode. So if you're not familiar with these and you don't know where to find them on your phone, that's okay. Understanding the baseline of what they mean is all the more helpful to becoming a better videographer and photographer. So Aperture, we're going to start there, is simply the hole or the opening in through which the light travels. So you think of that lens and that tiny little hole in the center, that is where the light will travel into. So how big that is, how fast it is, all comes into play with how well composed and exposed that image is. Now, in conjunction with that, we have shutter speed, and that is simply the length of time that the film or digital sensor inside the camera is exposed to that light. So think about when we just talked about aperture. Aperture is the hole. And then the shutter speed, that click, is how quickly that image is exposed and that light comes into the camera to expose that image. And when I mentioned speed, that's where we have ISO. So that is the speed of light traveling through the lens. So the higher you go, the lighter it's going to be. The lower you go, the darker it's going to be. But I'm not going to get too technical on that. There are some tricks and tricks to ISO, especially when it comes to grain, but that won't commonly be something that our newer smartphones today have any issues with. And then next we have depth of field. We're going to go into that further into detail later on in this presentation, but that is simply the distance between the nearest and the farthest objects that are acceptably sharp focus on an image captured with the camera. So you think if you hold your hand very close to your face, everything in the background then becomes blurred. And now everything, if you look at your hand, you can see every detail of your hand, but not every detail of what's in the background. You move your hand further out, the blur and that depth it shifts a little. You see a little bit more of the background and also a little bit of your hand. And the further you go, the difference it makes up as just your image of your eye. Same thing for your camera. So that is a really fun component that's going to help you become a really great photographer. And we'll even go into my favorite rule of thirds that helps you better compose an image. And lastly, focus. This is, an easy, pretty straightforward one, but that is the plane in the foreground, middle ground, and background where the picture is the sharpest. That is where you always want to make sure that your camera has a focus. So whether that's your subject or how you tell the story, especially in video, how you tell the story is where your focus should be. So those are some of the basic glossary of terms. And I want to interrupt really quickly because we will have this recorded. So if this is like, holy crap, this is a lot of information, I want to be able to go back to this. We've got you covered. This will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel. So first, we're going to dive into that image composition. So we talked about depth of field. So if you look at the image on the top, you've got this subject, these beautiful flowers right in sharp focus, and then you slowly start to rack out of focus where you see the water glistening on the seashore and you see the surfer blurred out in the background. That is an example of what we mean by depth of field. So you've got in the front, you have your foreground, your middle ground, and then your background. And here is where, especially in video, you have an opportunity, and the term that I use is rack focus. If the story you want to tell first starts with what is the story of these flowers here? Why did they get here? What is the meaning to them? And then you shift this focus then to bring the surfer better into focus. That is one element that helps you tell a story within a visual. Now, the other thing I want to present here is the idea of good and bad lighting. So lighting is everything. I mean, understanding your time of day. If you are somebody that, and if you're photographers, the early morning or that golden hour right after, I'd say like 6 or 7 p.m., right before the sun sets. The worst times a day, unless there is enough shade or it's an overcast day, is going to be anywhere from 10 a.m. to I'd say about 4, almost 5 p.m. The reason being is because all that light is going to be right above you. And when that light is above you, it creates those shadows beneath you. So it gives it's just a very harsh light that gives, especially on faces or portrait, it can give a really harsh look and feel. So, it really is an art, and weather has such a big play in good and bad lighting. Now, again, I don't want this to scare you. A lot of our smartphones today have a really good lighting sensor now, where even the newer iPhones and Androids, they will automatically correct that for you. So all that manual process and that glossary of terms that we learned about a few slides ago, we have our phones smart enough and powerful enough than some DSLR cameras out there. So that'll actually really, really help, when you're trying to go through the photo and video process. Now, the good and bad example that we have here, really the element comes down to what is the composition and where is the subject's focused. So in the above image where we have bad, is not necessarily all that bad. It's just, it's not telling a story in a compelling way. It's a little bit more flat. He's, out of focus. There could be something going on in the background. Rather, when you look at the image below, his face is well lit. We're shooting down a line of focus, so we go straight to his face. And you think about the story and the direction of that story when you take this image or shoot this video. I mentioned my favorite rule of thirds. This was something I remember learning in videography school and photography school. And I thought it was so cool because the idea here is, while everything is digital and it's a lot easier to edit after you've taken an image, a lot of people didn't have that luxury when it was film photography. You really had to look at the image in this small screen that you're shooting through and edit in that plane. So when it comes to rule of thirds, it's a compositional guideline that breaks an image down into thirds, so horizontally and vertically. And so you have 9 pieces with 4 grids. So positioning key elements along those grid lines, you'll end up with a better composition. And that is the beauty of the rule of the thirds, is that it's super simple. You can even turn on your rule of thirds or grid on your iPhone cameras or Android cameras. And you can go by that if you need the visual of it. Or you can simply identify those grids and use that template with your own eye. The other thing I want to point out is the idea of these PowerPoints. So you'll see in this demonstration that there are these small points right in the center. At the center of each grid line, these position points, such as a head if you're shooting in a portrait, a flower when you're shooting a still life, or the eye of a pet. It's shown in the image here and is a simple way to improve your compositions that really requires no art training or photographic experience. So you're welcome. This is your new art and the introduction to photography here. And so these are a great collection of tools and ideas that will help you be better at understanding image composition. So now I challenge everybody, the next time you have your phone and you want to take a picture of something, whether it's a product, it's a house, it's, whatever it may be, think about the subject and think about the story. And I even beg, start with the story and then add the subjects in and how you want to tell that story. And that is really going to help when you think about how you want to set up the composition and then adding in all those elements to really make that rich. So that includes your focus, that includes your depth of field, and any of those camera movements that you use with it. Now, let's talk about those camera movements. So this is a lot of fun, especially if you are interested in getting into TikTok. Our Photofy program will have video transitions in late 2022, so we're super excited about that. But the reason camera movements are so important is because, again, it is a great way to not only tell a story, but to really invite the audience into influencing reactions and creating these dynamic scenes that you can control what they think and how they feel. Not to mention, you can really have some fun with, as I mentioned, those TikTok transitions when you end one scene one way and begin another scene another way. And that, I think, will be a whole other webinar that we'll do at some point, because there's a lot of really cool transitions out there that are worth noting. So let's go over some of these. We're going to look at the dolly. So that's a real simple one. The dolly is simply the act of moving forward, or I guess you can say zooming into a scene. So this is you have your smartphone and you are simply moving towards the image. And I can actually come on screen here and show you. So I have my phone and I'm moving towards my subject. Now the next is going to be the jib or boom. So you have your subject right here, and I want to go up and I want to go down. The truck. So it's the same thing as dolly and boom, only we're going horizontally. So this way you're able to get a better view of the object. Some really cool things that I've seen on social and TikTok are the 360 video. Now that's a bit more advanced than what we'll cover here, but in the same sense, if you have a subject in the middle and you simply glide your phone around it or walk around the subject, you can create that same effect. Now the pan is if I'm standing still and I just, as you would in a panoramic photo, you go from one side of a scene and pan towards the other. And the same thing for tilt, go up or go down. And I tend to feel like that gives a little bit of that fisheye type effect. And then of course the roll. So if you want to kind of really, really shake things up and get creative with your compositions and transitions, you can do so that way. So again, this is a way that you can control the camera movements and guide a viewer into dynamic scenes. So they can make scenes more interesting and naturalistic, as well as making even a static scene more active with certain camera movements. And then next we chatted briefly about influencing reactions. So it's a great way to imitate a person's view during various circumstances. So if you're telling a story from your point of view, and say you're a realtor and you're in a house, or you want to show the full scope of what this kitchen looks like, panning from one area to the next, almost the same view as if you were somebody purchasing this home or interested in purchasing in this home, when you would walk into that kitchen and what that movement would feel like. In that sense, it's a great way to direct attention. So in the last scene or the last slide, we referenced the idea where that flower was in the foreground, we had the middle ground, and then we had a surfer in the background. I want to direct the user's attention or the viewer's attention to that surfer. So through rack focus, or even using something like a dolly and pinning and focusing past that flower and onto the surfer, it's a great way for me to direct attention and tell a story in the area that I want to tell. And lastly, again, it's controlling your narrative. So it's a great way to provide information, reveal new subjects, and even foreshadow or create ironic tension that characters are unaware of. So I would say, in any sense, there are so many different opportunities that you can put this into practice. So I give the realtor example. If you are somebody that wants to tell a story about your product, maybe it's a candle or it is a, I have my mouse here. You want to sell this product. So tell the story of every angle of it. And I think you'll have a lot of fun when you see really how creative you can be, even with your mobile device. Now we'll talk about stabilization tools. So again, these smartphones are jam-packed with all the good stuff, and they have made it so easy for us. As I mentioned, I went from using a DSLR camera, lugging around a 10-pound camera, all my lenses and things of that nature, which I still do on time to time. But the power that they have put into our cameras is phenomenal. The camera itself has in-camera stabilization. I know that the newer iPhone models, if you have the cinematic feature, that is a really, really great feature that makes it so fluid. But even Apple's new, regular stabilization tool is really, really strong for their video. Android would be the same thing. And I would say that if you don't have a phone that is, the iPhone X or 13, that's fine. There are still a lot of really inexpensive tools, even just a tripod, even just, I remember at some points, or even if I'm on vacation and I don't have a tripod, making a makeshift tripod to set my camera up. But, again, there's a lot of even gimbals that are really inexpensive that you can get for, less than 30, 40, 50 bucks. So would definitely recommend those if you're looking to take your skills to the next level. But again, these are all options, and really depends on the user and what you're trying to create. Now, lastly, we're going to touch briefly on audio. Audio phones, or the phone's audio recording apps. So on iPhone, I know that it's simply called Voice Memo. Super strong. It has great clarity. You can also purchase a external microphone like we have here that would play into the phone jack. However, Apple did away with their phone jacks, and so there is another converter that you would likely need so that that headphone jack reads it as a microphone. Happy to provide any links on that. If you're curious about those, drop us a note or we can add into the webinar chat section. But really, when it comes down to audio, you want to focus on being in a quiet place with no distractions. And if you can simply hear or even just do a test into that voice audio recording or on that video, you're going to know and you're going to understand if there's distractions, if your audience is going to be able to hear and listen through the clarity of your voice or whatever it is that you're recording. So speak clearly into the recorder if you are doing a video that you are recording your voice or telling a story. Or I would also recommend if you are looking for, just to spice up your videos and add a fun element, music is always great. Just make sure that you use royalty-free music. You don't want to get in trouble and always want to credit the artists out there. But there's a lot of really great, even free resources that you can tap into. YouTube stock library, easy peasy. You can Google it, download the free music that you want to use. Even you can download free video and stock video from there too. So a few things to think about for audio. And finally, we're at our live demo time. So I hope that this was helpful. I know it may seem like a lot and we call it basics because I promise you it still is basics. But not only will you have this as a recording that you can touch back on and learn from, I really hope that you put this into action. There's a lot of really easy things here when you just take the time to pick up your phone and try. And so I challenge you all to get creative, have fun with it, and really just start to explore what the capabilities are of yourself and the videos that you produce. Because at the end of the day, video is here to stay. Video is king, and the platforms that we publish on, algorithms favor video. So I definitely would recommend adding that into your marketing strategy if it's not already. And if it's something that is new to you, don't be overwhelmed. I know that can be overwhelming, any kind of new software or thing that you're trying to learn. This can be super, super fun. It can be a lot of fun. So have fun with it. And I'm going to turn it over for the live demo. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask. And if you're interested in any of the resources that we went over, we will have those available for you as well.